The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber burst open with a thunderous crash that silenced every conversation. Ambassador Kim Soo-jin walked through the entrance, her black diplomatic uniform sharp against the swirling crimson mists that filled the ancient hall. Behind her marched 2 human marines in full combat gear, their weapons powered down but clearly visible. 43 different alien species filled the curved amphitheater, their various forms creating a bizarre symphony of clicks, hisses, and electronic translations. The air itself buzzed with tension as universal translators worked overtime to convert the chaos into something resembling order. Soo-jin stepped onto the central platform, her boots echoing against the crystalline floor. The arguing stopped. Every eye sensor and optical organ in the chamber focused on the small human woman who had just walked into the heart of galactic power. The Kethmoran Empire is now under human administration, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The words hit like a plasma cannon blast. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Council member Thexara of the Silk Road Consortium shot to her feet, her 4 arms gesticulating wildly. Impossible! The succession laws clearly state the Sao. Succession laws have been followed exactly, Soo-jin interrupted, pulling out a data crystal that glowed with official seals. Emperor Kethamor I executed his final testament before the plague took his family. Everything is legal. A massive creature from the Void Hunters delegation, easily 3 meters tall and covered in chitinous armor, slammed his fist against his desk. The sound echoed like thunder. Legal or not, this is madness. Humans are Deathworlders, killers from a world that tried to murder them every day. They know nothing but war. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The ethereal delegation, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells pulsed with angry light. The robotic representatives of the machine collective buzzed with electronic disapproval. Council member Vexthul of the Hegemony slowly rose from his seat. His crystalline body caught the chamber's light, throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. As one of the oldest and most respected members, his words carried weight. Ambassador Soo-jin, he said, his voice like grinding stone. The Kethmoran Empire spans 200 star systems. Dozens of species call it home. Trillions of beings depend on its stability. And you propose to hand this responsibility to a species that has existed in galactic society for barely 50 years? Soo-jin met his gaze steadily. I propose nothing. Council member, the decision has already been made. By a dying emperor driven mad by fever, shouted another delegate. By an emperor who studied human behavior for decades, Soo-jin corrected. Emperor Kethamor left detailed records. He observed how humans treated prisoners of war, how they rebuilt worlds after conflicts, how they integrated with alien populations. He saw something others missed. Vexthul's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a sneer. Deathworlders cannot rule. They destroy. They conquer. They leave ash in their wake. Your species excels at breaking things, not building them. This empire will collapse within cycles, mark my words. The chamber erupted again. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves agreeing that giving humans control of a galactic empire was pure insanity. The hive mind queens clicked their disapproval. The energy beings of the Photon Syndicate dimmed with concern. Through it all, Soo-jin stood perfectly still. She had expected this reaction. Every human diplomat had trained for this moment, knowing that one day their species would face a test that would define their place in the galaxy. We shall see, she said simply. Phrase cut through the chaos like a monomolecular blade. Something in her tone, quiet confidence mixed with deadly certainty, made even the largest delegates pause. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away, the real work was beginning. Administrative Coordinator Lee Minho stood in what had once been Emperor Keithmore's private office, now converted into a crisis command center. Holographic displays surrounded him, each one showing a different disaster unfolding across the empire. The office itself was a marvel of alien architecture, walls that shifted color with the time of day, gravity fields that allowed walking on any surface, and a massive window that showed the sprawling city world of Veltar stretching to the horizon. But Minho had no time to appreciate the scenery. "Status report," he called out to his team. Park Jiwon, his deputy coordinator, gestured to the largest display. Her military background showed in her crisp movements and sharp attention to detail. 12 systems have declared independence. The Aimea governors think we're going to execute them and install human dictators. Another display showed cargo ships drifting in space. Supply convoys are stuck in hyperspace lanes. The captains are afraid to approach human-controlled stations. They think we'll confiscate their ships. "And the civilian populations?" Minho asked. "Terrified," reported Communications Officer Nam Soo-hyun from his position at the intelligence desk. "They're boarding up their homes and hiding their children. The propaganda about human brutality has been very effective." Minho walked to the great window and looked out at Veltar. The city world was a masterpiece of engineering. Floating districts, connected by energy bridges, towers that stretched into the clouds, and transport streams that moved millions of beings every hour. But now the normal flow of traffic had slowed to a trickle. Fear was paralyzing an entire civilization. Jiwon joined him at the window. "Sir, the betting pools on Nexus Station are giving us 6 months before complete collapse. Some bookmakers are taking bets on whether we'll last 3 months." Minho smiled grimly, his reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. "Then we'd better prove them wrong." He turned back to his team. "Send word to all regional coordinators. We're not here to conquer or control. We're here to serve. And it's time to show the galaxy what that really means." The transport shuttle. New dawn dropped through Korith Prime's thick atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction. Inside, Choi Hyun-woo gripped his safety harness as the ship shook violently. 3 weeks had passed since the galaxy learned of humanity's new responsibility, and now the real work began. "First time on an industrial world, sir?" asked pilot Kim Dae-sung as he fought to keep the shuttle steady through the turbulent air. "Currents." Hyun-woo looked out the viewport at the sprawling factory complexes below. Massive smokestacks pierced the orange sky, while rivers of molten metal flowed between processing plants. "First time as an administrator. Last time I was here, I was blowing up a weapons facility." The shuttle touched down on landing pad 7 with a bone-jarring thud. As the engines wound down, Hyun-woo could already hear the thunderous noise of industrial machinery echoing across the complex. The air itself tasted of metal and chemical processing. His escort waited outside, a squad of chitin workers led by Supervisor Thekmore. The insectoid beings stood nearly 2 meters tall, their chitinous shells gleaming under the industrial lights. Their compound eyes reflected dozens of images as they watched the human emerge from his ship. "Administrator Choi," Thekmore clicked in his native language, the universal translator converting his words into Korean. "The workers are concerned about new directives." Hyun-woo shouldered his inspection kit and followed the group toward Factory Complex 9. "What kind of concerns?" "They expect execution quotas. The previous administration demanded specific death rates to maintain fear and productivity. Workers who lived too long were considered lazy. The humans stopped walking. They expected workers to die. Factory 7 maintained a mortality rate of 12% per cycle. It was considered efficient." Thekmore's antennae twitched nervously. "How many deaths will you require?" "0, Hyun-woo said firmly. "Absolutely 0. The chitin supervisor's compound eyes clicked as they refocused. "I do not understand this word in context." Inside Factory Complex 9, the noise was overwhelming. Massive robotic arms swung molten metal beams through the air while chitin workers scrambled beneath them, dodging falling sparks. No safety barriers protected the walkways. No warning systems announced dangerous operations. Workers simply ran for their lives when the machines moved. Hyun-woo watched in horror as a stream of liquid metal poured just centimeters from a worker's head. The insectoid being didn't even flinch. This was normal. "The safety protocols are completely inadequate," he muttered, pulling out his scanner to measure toxic gas levels. The readings were off the charts. "Safety protocols?" Thekmore asked. "Equipment and procedures designed to keep workers alive," Hyunwoo pointed to a group of chitin beings welding without eye protection. How long before they go blind? Usually 3 cycles of work. And then what happens to them? They are recycled. Blind workers serve no purpose. Hyunwoo felt his combat training surge to the surface, the same rage that had driven him through battles across a dozen worlds. But this time, the enemy wasn't shooting back. The enemy was a system that treated thinking beings as disposable equipment. Within hours, work shuttles began arriving from orbit. Human engineers unloaded safety barriers, atmospheric processors, and medical equipment. The chitin workers watched in confusion as their new administrators began installing protective systems. "Why do you spend resources on worker protection?" asked Worker Prime Clixth, as Hyunwoo personally installed a safety rail around a molten metal processing station. "Because dead workers don't make anything," Hyunwoo replied, checking the rail's stability. "And injured workers make mistakes. Mistakes cause accidents. Accidents destroy equipment." But that wasn't the whole truth, and Clixth seemed to sense it. The insectoid being's antennae twitched as he processed the human's actions. By the end of the first week, Factory Complex 9 had been transformed. Atmospheric scrubbers cleaned the air. Warning lights and sirens announced dangerous operations. Medical stations staffed with human combat medics treated injuries that would have been ignored before. And for the first time in factory records, 7 complete work cycles passed without a single death. Clixth approached Hyunwoo during the night shift, his compound eyes dim with exhaustion, but bright with something that might have been hope. "Human administrator," he clicked carefully. "The workers speak of miracles. No deaths in 7 cycles. Some believe you possess magic that protects life." Hyunwoo was adjusting a ventilation system that would filter out toxic fumes. He paused in his work and looked at the insectoid being who had become his constant companion. "Over the past week, no magic, Clixth, just common sense. But why do you care if workers live or die? The previous rulers saw us as tools, useful until broken, then discarded. Why are humans different?" Hyunwoo set down his tools and faced the Worker Prime directly. The question had been building for days, and he could see it wasn't just curiosity. Clixth was asking for hope. Hope that his people's suffering might finally end. "Because you're not just workers anymore," Hyunwoo said simply. "You're our people now, and humans protect their people." 3,000 kilometers away on the research world of Velnara, Dr. Shin Boram was conducting her own revolution in the gleaming laboratories of the Ethereal Medical Institute. The Ethereal. Beings were fascinating creatures, pure energy contained within crystalline shells that allowed them to interact with physical matter. Their healing abilities were legendary throughout the galaxy, but their techniques remained mysterious to most species. "Your surgical methods are crude but effective," observed healer Yithma as she watched Boram demonstrate battlefield trauma. Procedures on a medical dummy. "You cut through flesh and bone with metal tools." Boram smiled as she sutured the practice wound. "Sometimes crude works when elegant fails. In combat, you don't have time for delicate energy work. You stop the bleeding first, then worry about pretty scars." The crystalline being pulsed with curious light. "And your medicines, these antibiotics, they destroy infections by poisoning bacterial life." "Basically, yes. We learned that some toxins can be medicines if you use the right amount." Boram pulled up a holographic display showing molecular structures. "But your energy healing could eliminate the need for toxic treatments entirely." What followed was the most intensive medical collaboration in galactic history. Human doctors who had learned their trade in battlefield hospitals worked alongside ethereal healers who could manipulate life energy itself. The combination was revolutionary. Within days, they had developed hybrid therapies that neither species could achieve alone. Ethereal energy work guided by human anatomical knowledge, human surgical techniques enhanced by ethereal healing energy. Battlefield trauma. Medicine combined with advanced regeneration technology. "Your healing methods could save thousands of our soldiers," Yithma admitted during their first successful hybrid surgery. "We have lost so many to injuries that energy healing alone cannot repair." Dr. Shin carefully monitored the patient's vital signs as ethereal energy accelerated the healing process. And your techniques could revolutionize our understanding of cellular regeneration. This isn't about one species helping another. It's about all of us becoming stronger together. The patient, an injured mining robot from the nearby asteroid, Fields, sat up on the operating table, its damaged limbs fully restored. Both human and ethereal technologies had been required to repair the complex biomechanical systems. As word spread through the galaxy about these unexpected collaborations, betting pools on human failure began to shift. Maybe the Deathworlders weren't planning to rule through fear after all. Maybe they had something else in mind entirely. The cargo transport, Earth's Promise, descended through Zephiria's purple-tinged atmosphere, its massive hold filled with equipment that confused every alien observer. Instead of weapons or surveillance gear, the ship carried seed storage units, soil analysis robots, and irrigation components that seemed far too complex for simple farming. Agricultural Coordinator Kang Minsu stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the golden plains of Zephyria stretch to the horizon. The world was beautiful but dying. Vast fields of withered crops marked where the previous administration's farming methods had slowly poisoned the soil. Landing in 60 seconds, announced pilot Yu Jihan from the cockpit. The local farmers are waiting, but they seem nervous. Minsu shouldered his equipment pack, checking that his soil scanners and genetic sequences were secure. They should be nervous. Their world is 3 growing seasons away from complete agricultural collapse. The ship touched down in the central farming district, kicking up clouds of dust that spoke of drought and overuse. A delegation of local farmers waited nearby, tall plant-like beings called chlorins, whose green skin could photosynthesize sunlight directly. They should have been thriving on an agricultural world, but instead they looked weak and malnourished. Farmer Prime Velgoth approached the human ship with hesitant steps. His bark-like skin was pale and cracked, showing the stress of years spent. "Fighting failing crops. Human administrator," he said through his translator unit. "We have prepared the tribute records. How much of our harvest will you require as tribute?" Minsu climbed down from the cargo ramp, his boots crunching on the dry soil. "I don't want tribute. I want to see your fields." The confusion was immediate. The Chloran farmers exchanged glances, through a complex system of color changes in their skin. Previous rulers had only cared about extracting resources, not examining farming methods. As they walked through the nearest field, Minsu's scanners revealed the devastating truth. The soil was depleted of essential nutrients, over-irrigated in some areas and bone-dry in others. Monoculture farming had left the land vulnerable to disease and pest infestations. "You plant the same crop in the same field every season," Minsu observed, kneeling to examine the soil composition on his scanner's display. "Yes," Velgoth confirmed. "The previous administration demanded maximum efficiency. 1 crop type per region, grown continuously. And when the soil nutrients run out, we add more chemical fertilizers, but each season requires more chemicals for the same yield." Minsu stood and looked across the failing farmland. This was exactly the kind of short-sighted thinking that had caused agricultural disasters on dozens of worlds. How many seasons until complete crop failure? Velgoth's skin shifted to a deep purple, the Chloran equivalent of despair. Perhaps 3, maybe 4 if we reduce the population. Within hours, human agricultural specialists were unloading equipment that seemed impossibly complex for basic farming. Soil restoration robots began analyzing field conditions. Mobile laboratories started testing crop genetics. Most puzzling of all, humans began constructing multiple seed storage facilities across the continent. "You create backup plans for backup." "Plans?" Velgoth observed, watching human engineers establish their 4th redundant irrigation system. "Why so many storage facilities? Why alternate water sources?" Minsu was programming soil restoration drones to begin regenerating depleted farmland. Each robot carried specialized bacteria and nutrients designed to rebuild healthy growing conditions. "On my homeworld, 1 failed harvest meant starvation," he explained, watching the drones spread across the fields like mechanical insects. Volcanic. Eruptions could destroy crops, floods could wash away seeds, droughts could kill everything growing. We learned to prepare for every possible disaster. The Chloran farmer's skin shifted through several color combinations as he processed this information. Your world tried to kill you regularly, every day, so we learned to survive by planning for the worst. Minsu pointed to the network of systems being installed. Multiple seed banks in case one is destroyed, different irrigation methods in case the primary system fails, diverse crop, rotations to keep soil healthy. The real revolution began when humans introduced crop rotation techniques adapted specifically to Zephyrian soil conditions. Instead of planting the same crop repeatedly, they created complex rotations that restored nutrients while maintaining production. Genetic analysis revealed that native Zephyrian plants could be crossbred with imported earth crops to create hybrid varieties that thrived in local conditions while providing better nutrition. The mobile laboratories worked around the clock, developing new crop strains that could resist local diseases and pests. But the most impressive change was the implementation of what humans called disaster preparedness farming. Every field had backup irrigation systems. Every crop variety had multiple genetic lines stored in separate facilities. Every farming district maintained emergency food reserves that could sustain the population for months. Within one growing season, the results were undeniable. Crop yields had increased threefold. Soil conditions were improving instead of degrading. The Chloran population, which had been preparing for starvation, suddenly found themselves with surplus food for the first time in generations. Meanwhile, 3 systems away on the mining world of Quareth, Administrator Hanji Seok was applying the same human survival instincts to mineral extraction. The crystalline miner caste had evolved specifically for underground work. Their rock-hard shells could withstand cave-ins, and their specialized limbs could navigate narrow tunnels. But evolution hadn't prepared them for the industrial-scale mining operations that the previous administration had demanded. Miner Prime Thexel met Giseok at the entrance to Deep Shaft Omega, the most productive and most dangerous mining operation on the planet. The tunnel entrance was marked with memorials to fallen workers, thousands of crystalline markers representing miners who had died in cave-ins, gas explosions, and equipment failures. Human Administrator, Thexel chittered in. His species' complex language, production quotas are posted in the main tunnel. We can increase output if you require additional tribute. Giseok studied the memorial markers, each one representing a life lost to preventable accidents. His combat engineering experience had taught him that the most dangerous enemy was often carelessness. I don't want increased production, he said finally. I want 0 casualties. The concept was so foreign that Thexel's translator unit struggled to process it. Casualties are inevitable in deep mining. The tunnels claim lives. It is the way of stone and metal. Not anymore. What followed was the most comprehensive mining safety overhaul in galactic history. Human engineers, many of them former combat specialists who understood survival under extreme conditions, redesigned every aspect of the mining operation. Redundant support systems were installed in every tunnel. Atmospheric monitoring equipment detected dangerous gas buildups before they became lethal. Emergency escape routes were carved through solid rock, providing multiple exit paths from every working area. The miner caste watched in amazement as humans implemented safety protocols that seemed to anticipate every possible disaster. Backup power systems ensured that life support never failed. Multiple communication networks kept workers connected to surface control. Emergency medical stations were positioned throughout the underground complex. In human mining, everyone goes home. Alive, Giseok explained to Thexel as they inspected the new safety systems. Dead workers extract no minerals. Injured workers make mistakes. Mistakes cause accidents. Accidents destroy equipment. Initially, the extensive safety measures slowed production. Miners had to follow new protocols, use additional safety equipment, and conduct regular safety checks. The Quareth Mining Consortium's efficiency ratings dropped by 15% in the first month. But as workers adapted to the new systems, something remarkable happened. Accidents disappeared almost entirely. Without the constant fear of death, miners could focus on their work instead of survival. Equipment lasted longer without damage from panic-induced mistakes. Tunnel collapses became virtually impossible. due to the redundant support systems. By the third month, production had exceeded previous levels. The combination of improved worker confidence and better maintained equipment created efficiency gains that no one had predicted. The miner caste began calling Giseok Lifesaver in their chittering language, a title that had never existed before because no previous administrator had cared whether miners lived or died. Throughout the Kethmoran Empire, similar transformations were occurring. On the gas giant refinery stations, humans installed emergency evacuation systems for situations that had never been considered survivable. On the asteroid mining platforms, they created redundant life support networks that could function even if primary systems were destroyed. The pattern was always the same. Humans didn't impose their ways through force. Instead, they adapted their survival instincts to each world's unique challenges, creating systems that were stronger and more resilient than anything that had existed before. Alien observers struggled to understand this approach. Where previous rulers had maintained control through single points of authority, humans created networks of redundant systems that could function even if part of the network failed. The galaxy was beginning to realize that Deathworld survival instincts, properly applied, could transform entire civilizations. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Horizon Watch detected it first, a massive flare erupting from the binary star system at the Empire's heart. Chief Observer Cathalex, a six-armed hexapod with advanced sensory organs, watched in horror as his instruments registered energy levels that defied comprehension. Emergency transmission to all human command centers, he clicked rapidly into his communicator. Solar storm magnitude unprecedented. Electromagnetic. Pulse will reach inhabited systems in 72 hours. 3,000 light-years away, Admiral Song Yuna was reviewing supply reports aboard her flagship Resilience when the priority alert screamed through the ship's communication systems. The message was brief but terrifying. A stellar phenomenon that occurred once every 1,000 years was about to destroy the Empire's entire communication and power grid. "Battle stations," she ordered, her voice carrying the calm authority that had seen her through dozens of combat situations. "This is not a drill." The bridge of Resilience exploded into controlled chaos. Officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations, while holographic displays showed the approaching wave of destruction. The solar storm would hit like an invisible tsunami, frying every unprotected electronic system across 200 star systems. "Fleet status report," Yuna called out as she took her position at the central command chair. Communications Officer Yu Tai-hyun's fingers danced across his console, coordinating with 50 different ships scattered across local space. "All vessels responding, Admiral. We have Chitin engineering ships, ethereal energy cruisers, minor assault transports, and human command vessels standing by." The diversity of voices that responded would have been complete chaos under any other command structure. Chitin crews chittered in their complex clicking language. Ethereal beings communicated through pulses of colored light. The crystalline miners ground out reports in their stone-like dialect. But months of human integration had created something unprecedented. A truly multi-species fleet operating under unified tactical doctrine. "Evacuation protocols are active across all threatened systems," reported Captain Oh Shungmin from his position aboard the Chitin vessel Stone Crusher. His voice was tense with the magnitude of the challenge ahead. "We have 2.3 million beings to relocate in 72 hours. The numbers were staggering. Entire worlds would need to be evacuated before the electromagnetic pulse arrived. Space. Stations, orbital habitats, and industrial platforms all had to be either shielded or abandoned. It was the largest evacuation in galactic history, and they had less than 3 days to pull it off. "Admiral," called out navigation specialist Kim Hirim from her position at the tactical display, "the storm front is moving faster than predicted. We're down to 68 hours. Yuna studied the three-dimensional map showing the storm's advance. The wave of electromagnetic destruction was racing through space at nearly light speed, leaving dead systems in its wake. Any world caught unprepared would be thrown back to pre-industrial technology levels. "Execute Emergency Protocol 7, she ordered. "All civilian transports to begin immediate evacuation. Military vessels provide escort and technical support. What followed was a masterpiece of logistics that showcased everything humans had learned about survival in hostile environments. The redundant communication networks that had seemed excessive to alien observers now proved their worth as primary systems began failing at the storm's leading edge. "Backup communications active," reported Yu Taehyun as his primary array went dead. Switching to quantum entanglement network. The quantum communication system, installed by human engineers as a paranoid backup, according to alien critics, now provided the only link between scattered evacuation fleets. While other species had relied on single communication methods, humans had built multiple independent networks that could function even under extreme conditions. On the mining world of Quarith, Administrator Han Ji-seok coordinated the evacuation of 3 million crystalline miners from their underground cities. The miners had lived beneath the planet's surface for millennia, never imagining they would need to flee their stone homes. "Transport capacity at maximum," reported his logistics coordinator as massive miner evacuation ships lifted off from the planet's surface. "But we're still short 200,000 spaces. Use the cargo haulers," Ji-seok ordered. "Strip out the mining equipment and install emergency life support. Everyone gets off this rock." The human approach to emergency evacuation was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of prioritizing valuable individuals or essential personnel, humans operated on a simple principle. Everyone matters, everyone gets saved. On the agricultural world of Zephyria, Coordinator Kang Min-soo faced a different challenge. The Chloran population was too large for conventional evacuation, but their plant-like biology made them more vulnerable to electromagnetic radiation than most species. "Emergency shelters are complete," reported his engineering team as they finished, constructing massive Faraday cages around population centers. "But the electromagnetic pulse will still affect their photosynthetic systems. Then we go underground," Min-soo decided. "Use the emergency bunkers we built for crop protection. If they can protect seeds from solar flares, they can protect people." The bunkers that had seemed like excessive preparation now became the salvation of an entire world. Millions of Chlorans took shelter in underground facilities that had been designed for agricultural disasters, but worked perfectly for protecting living beings. Meanwhile, in deep space, the real miracle was taking place as 50 different ship designs worked together under human coordination. Ethereal crews, with their natural ability to manipulate energy, operated the shield generators that protected evacuation transports. Chitin engineers, with their strength and precision, handled cargo operations that would have been impossible for other species. The crystalline miners, virtually immune to radiation, served as damage control specialists when ships' systems began failing. "Transport Group 7 is under heavy electromagnetic interference," reported Captain Lee Jinwoo from his escort position. "Their navigation systems are failing." Ethereal support ship. Lightbearer. Moving to assist, responded the energy being crew through pulses of communication light. Their vessel could generate protective energy fields around damaged ships, allowing them to continue operating, even as the storm's leading edge reached them. Admiral Yuna watched the evacuation unfold on her tactical display, each dot representing thousands of lives being moved to safety. The scale was unprecedented, entire star systems being emptied in less than 3 days. 67 transports clear of danger zone, reported navigation specialist Kim Hyerim. Emergency supply depots are providing fuel and life support exactly where needed. The backup supply stations that humans had established throughout the Empire, another example of their excessive preparation, now proved essential. Ships running low on fuel or life support could resupply without deviating from evacuation routes. As the last transport cleared the danger zone and the electromagnetic storm swept through empty space, the magnitude of what had been accomplished became clear. Not a single life had been lost. Every inhabited world had been evacuated or shielded. The multi-species fleet had operated with flawless coordination despite the chaos. "Storm passage complete," announced Chief Observer Caithlex from his shielded monitoring station. "All systems can begin return procedures," but the galaxy had seen something that changed everything. The human disaster preparedness protocols, refined over centuries of surviving natural catastrophes on Earth, had scaled up to encompass entire star systems. The organizational capability displayed during the evacuation surpassed anything in galactic history. As Admiral Yuna coordinated the return of millions of refugees to their homes, she realized that this crisis had become humanity's graduation exam. They had proven that Deathworld survival instincts properly applied could protect entire civilizations from disasters that would have destroyed previous empires. The test was over. Humanity had passed with perfect marks. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began in complete silence, something that hadn't happened in over 3,000 years of galactic politics. Representatives from 43 species sat in their assigned seats, staring at holographic displays that showed data they couldn't quite believe. Council Chairman Zorthak, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council millennia ago, activated the central display with a gesture of his energy-wreathed appendage. The numbers that appeared made several delegates gasp audibly. "The Kethmaran Empire Statistical Report," he announced, his voice echoing through the Crimson Chamber. Trade revenues increased by 400%, interspecies conflicts down by 93%, population growth positive across all member worlds, 0 systems requesting independence. Delegate Thexara of the consortium leaned forward, her forearms gesticulating in disbelief. This must be fabricated data. No empire achieves such statistics in 6 months. "The data has been verified by our independent monitoring systems," Chairman Zorthak replied gravely. "What we are seeing is unprecedented in galactic history." Council member Vex Thul of the Hegemony slowly rose from his crystalline seat. His body, normally bright with internal light, appeared dimmed, a physical sign of what other species might call embarrassment. As one of the most vocal critics of human governance, his next words carried enormous weight. "We miscalculated." "The human capacity for governance," he admitted, his stone-like voice barely above a whisper. "Everything we predicted has proven false." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. For Vex Thul to admit error was like watching a mountain apologize for being tall. "Furthermore," he continued, "member worlds within the Kethmoran Empire are voluntarily requesting increased integration with human administration. They are asking for more human involvement, not less." Ambassador Kim Sujin entered the chamber at that moment, her diplomatic uniform crisp and her expression calm. But this time, instead of facing hostile glares and angry protests, she walked into a room full of beings who were leaning forward to catch her every word. The transport that had brought her to the council station was itself evidence of the changes occurring throughout the galaxy. The ship Unity's Dawn was a marvel of interspecies cooperation. Human engineering combined with ethereal energy systems, chitin manufacturing precision, and minor durability enhancements. It represented the new reality taking shape across human-administered space. "Ambassador Sujin," Chairman Zorthak said formally, "the Council requests your explanation for the remarkable transformation of the Kethmoran Empire." Sujin stepped onto the central platform, the same spot where she had faced hostile accusations just 6 months earlier. The holographic displays surrounding her showed images from across the Empire, thriving worlds, bustling trade stations, and integrated populations working side by side. "You assumed we were conquerors because you only saw us during wars," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "But humans don't conquer worlds, we adopt them. Every species, every world becomes part of our extended family, and humans will do anything to protect their family." The evidence was overwhelming. On Koreth Prime, Chitin workers had gone from a 12% mortality rate to 0 deaths in 6 months. Production had increased dramatically, as healthy, confident workers operated more efficiently than terrified ones ever could. The Chitin workers call Administrator Choi their lifesaver, Sujin continued, gesturing to images of the transformed factories. "They have never had a ruler who cared whether they lived or died. On Zephyria, the agricultural revolution had exceeded every projection. The Chloran population had not only survived their approaching famine, but was now exporting surplus food to neighboring systems. The planet that had been 3 seasons away from starvation was now feeding other worlds. The Chlorans have renamed their world Second Bloom in honor of their agricultural renaissance, Sujin explained, as images showed vast green fields where withered crops had once failed. They say humans taught them that their world was not dying, it was just sleeping. The mining world of Quarath had become the safest extraction operation in the galaxy while simultaneously achieving record production levels. The crystalline miners, who had accepted death as an inevitable part of their work, now operated in conditions that previous administrations would have considered impossibly safe. The miners have created a new word in their language, Sujin noted. They call it life mining, the concept that workers and resources can both be extracted safely. But the most impressive transformation had been revealed during the solar storm crisis. The largest evacuation in galactic history had been executed flawlessly, with 0 casualties across 200 star systems. The multi-species fleet coordination had demonstrated organizational capabilities that no single empire had ever achieved. Delegate Plexmore of the Robotic Collective processed the data through his quantum analysis systems. Statistical probability of achieving such coordination during crisis events, 0.003%. Human tactical doctrine appears to scale effectiveness exponentially when managing diverse operational units. We learned to work together because survival demanded it, Sujin replied. On our homeworld, cooperation meant life, competition meant death. We applied the same principles to galactic governance. The transformation wasn't limited to individual worlds. Trade routes that had been unstable for centuries now operated with clockwork precision. The redundant systems humans had installed meant that mechanical failures, pirate attacks, or natural disasters couldn't disrupt commerce. Backup. Plans had backup plans, and every contingency had been prepared for. Your species exhibits behavioral patterns consistent with pack survival instincts, observed the ethereal delegate, their crystalline form pulsing with analytical light. You extend tribal protection to adopted group members regardless of biological origin. Exactly, Sujin confirmed. When we accept a species into our administration, they become our people. Human military doctrine, human survival instincts, human protective behaviors, they all apply to our adopted family members. Council member Vex Thul requested permission to speak again. His crystalline form had brightened slightly as he processed the implications of what he was witnessing. The hegemony formally requests human administrative consultation for our outer rim territories, he announced. We have 17 systems plagued by resource conflicts and population instability. The chamber fell silent at this stunning reversal. The hegemony had been one of humanity's most vocal critics, and now they were requesting human assistance. Within minutes, the communication requests began flooding in. The Silk Road Consortium wanted human logistics expertise for their trade networks. The Machine Collective requested human integration protocols for managing biological populations. The Void Hunters needed human tactical doctrine for coordinating multi-species military operations. By the end of the emergency session, 17 different empires had submitted formal requests for human administrative consultation. The species that had been dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had become the most sought-after governance specialists in the galaxy. Ambassador Sujin smiled as she watched the transformation unfold. The irony was perfect. Humanity had spent centuries fighting to earn respect through military conquest. They had proven their warrior capabilities in dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. But in the end, they had gained something far more valuable than fear or respect. They had become indispensable. The Deathworld survival instincts that made humans formidable in combat, preparedness, adaptability, loyalty to the group, the ability to coordinate under extreme stress, had made them exceptional administrators. The same traits that helped them survive on a hostile world had transformed them into the galaxy's premier civilization builders. As her transport ship, Unity's Dawn, departed the council station, Sujin looked out at the stars and smiled. The age of human expansion had begun, but not through conquest or domination. It had begun through competence, compassion, and the simple human understanding that everyone deserves to come home safe at the end of the day. The galaxy was about to discover that the most dangerous thing about Deathworlders wasn't their ability to destroy, it was their ability to make everything better. The end.